This show has plenty of moments that beautifully highlight the importance of friendship for kids. Among them are a few hilarious instances where even Grim, despite being their slave, ends up becoming Billy and Mandy's best friend. This episode marks Nurgle's first appearance
to the center of the world.
and also gives us a glimpse of Grim's softer side, proving he can be more than just a servant. He's a true friend to Billy and Mandy. It all starts with Billy mimicking his favorite superhero series in classic Billy fashion, only to be suddenly dragged into Nurgle's world. Turns out, Nurgle desperately wants a best friend, and because he's extra like that, he doesn't just kidnap Billy, he takes Mandy and Grim along for the ride too. Initially, Grim is over the moon about finally being rid of Billy and Mandy. He happily returns home and spends his day in absolute bliss, enjoying his newfound freedom. Meanwhile, Nurgle is pulling out all the stops trying to force Billy and Mandy into being his friends.
No, faster.
But surprise, surprise, friendship doesn't work that way. Back at home, Grim soon realizes that life without Billy and Mandy is, well, boring. While reminiscing, his eyes fall on a bunch of posters Billy put up for celebrating their friendship. That's when it hits Grim. Billy actually considers him a true friend. Moved by this, Grim wastes no time and heads back to Nurgle's world to bring Billy and Mandy home. Of course, Nurgle isn't ready to let them go, so Grim steps up, ready to fight for his friends. The experience not only deepens Grim's understanding of friendship, but also reminds him that Mandy's weird antics might just drive him to the brink someday. In another moment, Mandy decides to take a vacation, leaving Billy looking utterly miserable.
Please, don't go!
Seeing his friend down in the dumps, Grim goes the extra mile and creates the clone of Mandy to cheer him up. Billy's smile returns, and it's clear once again that Grim isn't just a scary skeleton. He's a friend who truly values Billy's feelings. One day, Mandy decides to go on a family vacation, and for the first time, Billy and Mandy are going to be far apart from each other for an extended period. Naturally, he's pretty upset about it because he's going to miss her. Hard to admit, but it's true. Billy, in his usual dramatic fashion, ends up bawling about it to Grim. Now Grim is used to seeing Billy either pulling off some ridiculous stunt or laughing like a maniac. But this time, he's shocked. Billy is actually crying over Mandy. This moment tugs at Grim's cold, bony heart, and he gets a little emotional himself. Deciding to help, he presents Billy with a watermelon that looks eerily like Mandy. But here's the catch. This watermelon copy is the opposite of Mandy in every way. It's like the anti-Mandy, the yin to her yang. When Mandy returns and sees this watermelon, she completely freaked out. Not exactly the warm, fuzzy reaction Billy was hoping for. And let's be real, we can only imagine what she did to that poor watermelon. But here's the real kicker. Even though Grim tries to act tough and distant, we can clearly see that he has a soft spot for Billy and Mandy. He might act like he wants to escape them, thinking they're a hassle, and honestly, they kind of are. But deep down, he cares. There's even a moment where Grim, trying to prove his friendship, stops a magician from selling Billy and Mandy. In this episode, Grim decides to take Billy and Mandy to the afterlife circus, thinking it will make them happy. They finally arrive, but to their surprise, the place is practically empty, with only the magician and his crew around. Once the show ends, the magician notices Billy and Mandy and gets excited because, well, they're humans. Apparently, no one's showing any interest in the circus, but the magician believes that if two humans are part of the show, the crowds will flock in. Grim, ever the loyal, gets an offer from Jake to sell Billy and Mandy, but instead of giving in, Grim proves his loyalty by refusing to sell them. Eventually, the magician forcibly drags Billy and Mandy into the circus, hoping to use them as his big draw. However, when Grim hears about this, He's actually a bit pleased because, well, in a twisted way, he feels like he's been freed from his slave duties. But of course, the happiness doesn't last long. Billy's mom shows up, threatening to make Grimm's life miserable unless he brings Billy and Mandy back by the end of the day. Now, this is where Grimm's soft side kicks in. He could have just disappeared and left Billy and Mandy trapped in the circus forever. But being the surprisingly good friend that he is, Grimm can't stand being away from them for long, so he heads back to rescue them. In the end, Grimm doesn't even have to fight anyone to free them. But if it came down to it, he wouldn't hesitate to throw down. Because even the Grim Reaper has limits when it comes to friendship. One day, Billy decides he wants to grow a beard, so he asks Grimm for help. Grimm, who's seen Billy cry over the smallest things more times than he can count, agrees to help without much hesitation. He gives Billy a special shampoo designed to help him grow his beard. Billy uses it a little too enthusiastically, and before long, he's looking less like a guy with a beard and more like his Sasquatch to miss the hair appointment.
This is the greatest beard in the world!
Let's just say he's a whole new level of hairy chaos that no one was ready for. In another episode, Billy is faced with an English test the next day,
And I stink at math!
and as usual, he's totally unprepared. Grimm, noticing Billy's worried expression, decides to help him out. He gives Billy a special mind bug that should turn his empty head into something that can actually absorb information. But as usual, things don't go as planned. The bug doesn't exactly go into Billy's brain. It finds its way into his pet, and soon enough, his pet becomes his teacher. Suddenly, Billy's pet is the one teaching him all the English lessons he needs to know. In this episode, we see Grimm fall for Malaria, a gothic woman who is, well, as dark and mysterious as his own soul. Surprisingly, Malaria too is drawn to Grimm's dark and cool vibe. Clearly, they're a match made in gloomy heaven. Their love blossoms quickly, but there's one thing Grimm doesn't know. Malaria isn't interested in Grimm's heart, but in his weapons.
Underworld!
When Billy and Mandy find out about Malaria's true intentions, they try to warn Grimm. Initially, he brushes them off, not realizing he's falling into a trap. But eventually, he gets betrayed by Malaria, and he finally realizes his mistake. In this episode, the bond between Grimm, Billy, and Mandy is tested by an external threat. Even though their usual dynamic is chaotic and dysfunctional, Billy and Mandy succeed in showing that when Grimm needs help, they'll be there for him. On the flip side, Grimm shows that he values their friendship, apologizing after realizing his mistake. This episode makes it clear that Grimm isn't just a slave to Billy and Mandy out of obligation. He's a reluctant friend who genuinely enjoys their company. Despite the dark and doom-filled exterior, he's got a heart that, once in a while, beats for the right reasons.